If you wonder who I am Northern Ireland.
Baby, I'm saying that. I was born in Belfast. Hear the shotgun shell blast. And your soul's going to hell fast. You tried to jump, but you fell fast. Fuck surveillance, the hell with them. I was born in Belfast.
Észak-Írországban vagyunk, Belfast városában, ez pedig az egyik olyan békefal, ami megakadályozza, hogy a fal egyik oldalán élő írek és a másik oldalon élő angolok egymásnak essenek. Kevesen tudják, de a Brexit körüli húzavona ettől a faltól függ. A Brexit sorsa ugyanis nem Londonban dől el, hanem itt messze északon, Észak-Írországban. A sztori röviden, hogyha az elszakadó Egyesült Királyság határa Észak-Írország és Írország közé kerül, akkor az ír nacionalisták kezdenek el robbangatni, hogyha a határt Nagy-Britannia és az ír sziget közé húzzák meg, akkor a britek lesznek nagyon idegesek, hogyha pedig nincs határ, akkor nincs Brexit sem. Azért utaztunk ide a messzi északra, mert ki akartuk deríteni, hogy miért nem lehetett egy szót sem hallani erről a fontos kérdésről a Brexit körüli húzavonában. Észak-Írországban az utóbbi 20 év néhány robbantást és gyilkosságot leszámítva relatív békében telt. Elsőre az lepett meg minket, hogy az emberekben még ma is élénken él a háborús időszak emléke.
People getting shot every day, blew up.
The conflict in Northern Ireland was a dirty war. There's no question about that.
Actually, the injuries that people suffered in the cause of the violence are very personal.
And when we are sitting here just round the corner, there was explosions. But if you went out after 11 o'clock, you could be shot.
We learned as a child to lie on the ground when we heard gunshots. We knew that if the army were in the street, that we had to come into the house.
Az írek és az angolok ellenségeskedése az évszázados angol hódításokig nyúlik vissza. A legmélyebb sebet mégis az 1845-ös burgonyavész ejtette, amikor a helyi angol földesurak és az Egyesült Királyság közönye miatt 1 millió ír halt éhen. Ez azóta is tartó bizalmatlanságot szült az angolok iránt, és elindította az ír szabadságharcot. Írország nagy része 1922-ben vált függetlenné. Észak-Írország ugyanakkor az Egyesült Királyság része maradt, ahol az írek továbbra is másodrendű állampolgárként éltek. 1969-ben elkezdődtek a tüntetések, amelyekre brutálisan válaszolt az angol hadsereg. Beindult az ír terrorizmus, az angol paramilitáris egységek pedig ellentámadtak. A 30 évig tartó konfliktusban 3600 ember halt meg. A háborúskodásnak az alig 20 éve aláírt nagypénteki egyezmény vetett véget, aminek a legfontosabb eleme, hogy nem lehet határ Észak-Írország és Írország közt. A Bombay Streeten vagyunk, ez az a negyed, ami a legdurvábban megszenvedte az angolok és az írek konfliktusát. 1969-ben ezt a negyedet felégették az angol unionisták. Ezután építették föl ezt az úgynevezett békefalat, azért, hogy a két felet egymástól távol tartsák, gondolván, hogy néhány hónap múlva ezeket majd elbontják. Azóta 50 év telt el, és a kerítések csak egyre magasabbak és magasabbak lettek.
We have two different nationalities basically trying to coexist and live side by side.
You know, nationalists are being told, well, you know, our rights are being trampled and we're not being given access to our Irish language, etc. Unionists are being told, oh, they're taking down the flag, they're curbing parades.
Ez a város írek lakta területe, ez pedig egy olyan kocsma, amiről mindenki tudja, hogy az írott tagok és szimpatizánsok törzshelye, és most azt akarom megtudni tőlük, hogy ők hogyan gondolkodnak a Brexitről. A díszítés olyan emberek portréit jelenti, akik vagy utcai összetűzésben, vagy éjségsztrájkban haltak meg a 70-es, 80-as években. You mentioned both of you were in prison that time?
Yes. We fought the war against Britain and we used weapons and we used various tactics.
When was it?
It was back in the 70s and the 80s. The two communities were against each other. If you were a Catholic or a nationalist, you were a target. You could have been killed. It's an alien way of life for us, to be quite honest. To us it is. Definitely, that's a British way of life. What you seen on the Shankill today was a British way of life. But we're Irish. No matter what the Shankill people told you, this is our Ulster, this is our country.
Ezek után elmentünk az emlegetett Shankill Roadra, ami a radikális brit pártiak egyik központja. Vajon hogy látják ők a helyzetet? Ez pedig a brit radikálisok kocsmája, ahová csak csöngetéssel lehet bejutni.
You know, there were things that went on, and like the Shanklebombing of innocent people in the chip shop, you know.
Yes.
It's not really cricket, is it? The people of Northern Ireland will not take it lying down. You know, it's not... With England, with Scotland, with Wales, why should we be treated any differently? So if there are measures put in place, boycotting goods or whatever peaceful means or other means, I would fully support it.
Ne gondoljuk, hogy a békefalak csak történelmi emlékek, amit jeleznek ezek a ketrecek is. Az írek házait borították be velük, mert a túloldalról még ma is dobálnak át köveket, molotov koktélokat.
The risk of Brexit is that the divisions that are very deep here will be started again, and that has been the big concern.
And it doesn't take very much, I think, here to scratch below the surface and bring those sectarian tensions back out to the fore, and I think that's what Brexit's done.
A Brexit után két helyre tehetik a határt. Az egyik lehetőség, hogy az Ír-szigetet vágják ketté, ahogy 20 éve is volt. De ennek a megoldásnak beláthatatlan következményei lennének. Egy látszólag teljesen jellegtelen úton sétálok, semmi nem utal arra, hogy két ország határán vagyunk, a hátam mögött van Írország, előttem pedig Észak-Írország. 20 évvel ezelőtt átlépni ezen a vonalon élet és halál kérdése volt.
The motorway didn't exist, and beyond the road was the only road between Belfast and Dublin. And it was known as the most dangerous road in Western Europe because of the number of ambushes on that road.
And when I was a child, if I wanted to cross the border, my father's car would have been stopped, everyone would have been taken out the side of the road, the boots would have been searched, so you'd have maybe been there an hour just to go for a mile. Whereas now it's completely seamless.
A big part of the Good Friday Agreement was that freedom of access to the whole of Ireland for those of us on the moderate nationalist side of the debate. It was a big part of the reason that you could win out over physical force republicanism. You can say you can achieve what is effectively the all-Ireland dimension by removal of the border.
Infrastructure at that border, and the visual, that's a very visual sort of manifestation of occupation to some people that we haven't had in 20 years. That makes them very easy to recruit, because then it's difficult to explain to someone an occupation they've never seen, but if they can see it, it becomes much easier.
A határ visszaállítása egy csomó praktikus szempontból is elég bonyolult lenne, mivel a határ össze-vissza kanyarog, és sok helyen gazdaságokat, farmokat vág ketté, itt pedig a templomot választja el a temetőtől.
So the border requirement is very simple, really. If either part of these islands is outside of the single market and the customs union, there have to be checks somewhere.
Az egykori határ közelében vagyunk, Newryban. Ez a város 20 évvel ezelőtt még egy kis szegény település volt, és a határ elmozdulásával robbant be, és már egy gazdag kereskedelmi központ.
But it was very, very hard at the times. But when the border come away, the trade in Newry picked up, and it was very good for Newry. But with this Brexit, we don't want a border.
Northern Ireland, you're absolutely correct, is being quite successful at the minute. It's not just because we've had 20 years of peace here in Northern Ireland, but it's because we've had 40 years of membership of the European Union. And that's really important for us to continue, because our supply chains are really integrated. Like a bottle of Baileys can have 5 border movements before it's finished.
De akkor sem jobb a helyzet, ha a határt a tengerre tennék, Nagy-Britannia és az Ír-sziget közé. Ez ugyanis a brit pártiakat bőszítené fel.
So if this borders in the Irish Sea, which to them is an economic united Ireland, and that's what it seems to them, and in reality that's sort of what it is, because we will have the same economic situation as the South. To them that's a stepping stone to united Ireland. So that's, if we're already in an economic united Ireland, it's not going to take very much just to push it that little bit further. And so they've vowed to resist that. And from a loyalist point of view, it is a further attack on us. So they see everything as an attack on their identity.
Oh, give me a home where there's no Pope of Rome, where there's nothing but Protestant state.
Kelet-Belfastban vagyunk, ez a lojalisták, azaz brit pártiak területe. Ide 20 évvel ezelőtt egy írnek bejönni életveszélyes lett volna. Itt működik a Red Hand Commando, azaz Vörös Kéz kommandónak az irodája. Ez is egy jellegzetesen északír dolog, hogy itt a paramilitáris egységek gyakorlatilag teljesen nyíltan létezhettek. Most fogunk találkozni a Red Hand Commando ma is regnáló vezetőivel, akinek itt az irodája.
We're very loyalist in our way. This is the Queen. It's from the Unionist background, so our want to stay within the United Kingdom. A border down the Irish Sea takes away part of my Britishness. Economically, I'm tied to Ireland and the United Ireland. That's not what we agreed in the Good Friday Agreement. It's not where we want to be. My friends fought and died to stay British. And this is taking away part of my Britishness.
I come from the land of saints and scholars with pub brawls and bloodstained collars and murals on walls. Where the people...
Az írek ugyanakkor ünnepelnek.
The backstop and his latest plan, they're the worst, or the best of a worst option in a sense. It shows the British at the worst in a sense, because a lot of them still think they have an empire. They don't. The only good point about Brexit, if there is a good point, is that it's brought the whole issue of reunification of Ireland to the forefront.
Any chance of that?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah.
In England, didn't really think about the border with Ireland as being part of the European Union. They were more concentrated on the border with France.
The thing is, people had found it so interesting before they actually had a referendum, they might have thought differently, but nobody considered that we even existed until after the vote, and then they were like, shit, what are we going to do about it?
Boris Johnson has come to realise the only way to get some Brexit, if that's what he wants, is to settle the Irish question.
Szóval a Brexit a több évszázados ír-angol háborúskodás lezárása lehet, mégpedig az írek győzelmével. Jelentőségében ez mondjuk olyan, mintha Magyarországon hirtelen visszaállítanák a Trianon előtti határokat. De mi lesz ennek a hatása?
What loyalists will tell you it was, well, the Irish government threatened that if there was a border, a hard border, there'd be publican violence, and it worked. So why don't we threaten violence, and it'll work for us as well?
Violence in democracy seems to be more of a threat than people being peaceful and democratic. The British government have now took the easy option and faced down the loyalist and unionist community.
I would imagine the security situation there will be hundreds of young people, young men mainly, taken to the streets, blocking roads, riots in the sense of, burning vehicles, causing trouble. And the problem is that problem can only usually happen in loyalist strongholds, but they can cut off like major arterial routes in and out of cities.
Bár ez egy kelet-belfasti lakónegyed, mégis 1000 jele van annak, hogy a környék bevetésre kész.
By putting that border down the Irish Sea, it partitions Northern Ireland from the rest of the UK, which is totally unacceptable. It's not constitutional, it's not something that we were consulted about, and it's not something that I feel that people will readily accept. In some places they will refuse to accept it, and I believe quite rightly so. If there's some degree of protest organised, I'd be willing to back it, take part in it. But if they try to put a border down Ireland again, it's going to be a different fight again. It's going to be back to what it used to be. Weapons again and bombs again.
Kelet-Belfastban van az unionisták pártjának a központja is, és velük azért akarok beszélni, mert korábban támogatták a Brexitet, most viszont hirtelen valami egészen másról beszélnek.
We supported leaving the European Union, but we have one red line on that, and that is that Northern Ireland leaves the European Union on the same terms as the rest of the United Kingdom. My first principle is, as a unionist, as someone that wants Northern Ireland to stay in the Union, if in order to achieve that, Brexit has to become softer, then so be it.
I voted for the leave. I was a very ardent Remainer, but the deal that Boris Johnson's put on the table does not suit my people and my community. Looking at the way we're being treated now, I would have preferred to remain within the EU than to have the deal that takes part of my Britishness away within the United Kingdom.
De egy valamiben mindenki egyetért. Boris Johnson megbízhatatlan, és még csak nem is az angol népnek dolgozik.
Johnson, who was in this country about 10 or 11 months ago, promised the Unionist people, the British people of Northern Ireland, he would never, and the Conservative Party would never contemplate a border down the Irish Sea. And what has he done? He's put a border down the Irish Sea. This man is not to be trusted.
És ugyanezt mondják a lojalisták esküdt ellenségei is.
Boris Johnson, in my view, has no interest in Brexit or anything else. Boris Johnson has interest in Boris Johnson. He wants to be Prime Minister at whatever cost. You're dealing with a person who isn't very trustworthy.
And Boris Johnson is an English nationalist. He wants a Brexit that will suit him, and it will suit big business, and it will suit finance, and it will suit all those things. I'm not sure that keeping the union together is top of his list of priorities. Their idea of a Brexit is something that will take away business regulations and rights for workers. It'll allow their big bodies to come in and open up businesses, which will be able to flourish without proper EU regulations. It's about making money.
People will scratch their heads in future years at people who have stated that the union is their number one political cause. They have definitely damaged the union in a way that nationalists and Republicans never managed to do.
You know why? 'Cause I was born in Belfast. Hear the shotgun shell blast.